A study of a commercial flight in 1979 helps us understand how viruses can spread in confined spaces like planes. 54 passengers were on board and delayed for 3 hours before takeoff. At this time, the ventilation systems were not functioning. 72 hours after the flight, 72% of the aircraft passengers became infected with influenza, all from one infected passenger who had boarded the flight. Modern aircraft now use high-efficiency particulate air filters, or HEPA filters, to protect passengers from diseases. Cabin air is blasted through a 3D mesh of microglass fibers to capture microscopic particles and deadly germs. But can it protect us against the novel SARS-CoV-2 virus? The SARS-CoV-2 virus is microscopic, measuring approximately 125 nanometers in diameter, which is similar to other viruses like influenza. It's smaller than bacteria, which range widely in size but start from around 1,000 nanometers and a fraction of the size of a red blood cell, or the diameter of a human hair. The gaps in the HEPA filter are large enough for a virus particle to pass through, but they are still caught by Brownian motion. Smaller gas particles are shot through the filter. These knock the virus particles around in a zigzag-like fashion, increasing the probability of collision with one of the mesh fibers where it is then deposited. HEPA filters on board modern aircraft remove 99.995% of all virus particles, and the air is recycled through the cabin 20 to 30 times every hour. Regular maintenance and replacement of the filters is required to maintain that level of efficiency. But HEPA filters are not the silver bullet to the prevention of virus transmission within aircraft cabins. Another well-studied flight, a Boeing 737 carrying 120 people, flew for 3 hours from Hong Kong to Beijing on March 15, 2003, where a 72-year-old man with SARS boarded the plane. The World Health Organization could only make contact with 65 people 8 days after the flight. But of those, 22 were found to have been infected with SARS. The majority of those were located close to the 72-year-old man, indicating localized infection. However, infected passengers were identified throughout the cabin, and it's believed they had no contact with the infected person either before or after the flight. This has perplexed epidemiologists. The challenge facing scientists and the aviation industry is understanding exactly how SARS-CoV-2 is transmitted from an infected person to another person, which is more complicated than you might think. We know that SARS-CoV-2 is primarily excreted through respiratory droplets, which leave the mouth and nose. According to the World Health Organization, these droplets are relatively heavy, do not travel far, and quickly sink to the ground. These droplets can land on objects and surfaces around the person, such as tables, doorknobs, and handrails. People can become infected by touching these objects or surfaces and then touching their eyes, nose, or mouth. This indicates that the likeliest spread of the virus is from touching contaminated surfaces where the virus can remain viable for several hours and sometimes days. For these reasons, airports and air cabins are being deep cleaned and in some cases radiated with UV light to kill the virus. Strict hand washing regimes are also being promoted to prevent transmission. But this doesn't give the full picture. A recent hospital study in Singapore looked at SARS-CoV-2 viral particles in samples taken from the air surrounding COVID patients. They found that virus particles were present in droplet sizes ranging from 1,000 to 4,000 nanometers, despite the hospital rooms having their air changed 12 times an hour. Droplets of this size can hang in the air for up to 3 hours, but limitations of the study meant they couldn't conclude whether these aerosol droplets were a possible route of transmission. However, one of the first animal studies of SARS-CoV-2 in golden Syrian hamsters has found that aerosol droplets was in fact a successful route for transmission. This controlled study is problematic for governments and industry wishing to reduce the 2-metre social distancing rule. If virus particles can hang in the air for up to 3 hours and continue to be infectious, then people need distancing and shielding to protect themselves. Ventilation systems must also not move infected air around. For this reason, the aviation industry is looking at methods of social distancing in the cabin, including removing the middle seat, but this would come at a high cost that would ultimately be passed on to the consumer. Alternatively, an Italian company called Aviointeriors has proposed a cabin redesign to help prevent localized transmission through aerosol droplets. Although an expensive investment, this would maintain passenger numbers and protect against any future pandemics. As the lockdown breaks are being lifted and people begin to travel again, the scientific community urges caution. Although huge advances have been made in our understanding of the novel SARS-CoV-2 virus, we still know very little about its transmission. There are few controlled studies and none in humans due to the deadly nature of the virus. We therefore rely on models based on similar viruses like influenza and observations from the current pandemic, which all have their limitations. The aviation industry will need to go to great lengths to prevent the spread of SARS-CoV-2 or risk contributing to a second wave. The industry will be closely scrutinised over the coming months as international travel takes off again. With some low-cost airlines already ignoring social distancing advice and filling the middle seat, only requiring passengers to wear masks, there are already concerns that not enough is being done.